Hey, this is Jamey with Stonemaier Games. While I usually talk about tabletop games, today I'm going to talk about a game that many of you have recommended to me over the last few months, especially when I put out my video about my favorite deck building games, and that is Slay the Spire. This is a digital only game that is essentially, well, it is a deck building game in digital form, and it does some things that you can't really do in a digital game. It has lots of percentages that are upgraded through items and cards and things like that, some randomness that you can't do as well in a tabletop game. But I played it the other day. It's essentially a tabletop game in digital form, and I had a lot of fun with it. I can totally see why people love this game, and I loved it as well. So much so that I deleted it so that I don't play it a lot because it is really, really good, and I can see how people can get hooked on it. Um, so hopefully that is a shining testament to the game. There are some really cool mechanisms that surprised me because I kind of thought it was just going to be a regular deck builder, but with some special elements that made you feel powerful. But it does some really unique things, and if you haven't played it, I don't know, you might learn some things like I did by playing through it. So one of those things is that the deck building works very different than a normal deck building game in that you play over the course of a game. You were trying to basically work your way through a series of enemies to get to the final boss and win. And one thing I didn't realize as I was doing this is that your health doesn't go up from enemy to enemy. It doesn't replenish. So you start out with what, like 70, 80 health, and there are potions and things you can get to replenish your health. But if I end battle number 3 with 50 health, I enter battle number 4 with 50 health. And so you are really trying to survive all the way to the end, which makes defense a big part of the game. You're not just trying to kill the enemy as fast as possible, you're also trying to mitigate the enemy's attacks. And one thing I think that the game does really well, I've heard the designer talk about this a little bit, is that you know pretty much exactly what the enemy is going to do on their turn. You can see the amount of damage they're going to do, or if they are going to cast a spell against you, and you can really, as far as I could tell, you could tell exactly what type of spell and how much damage. So with that information in hand, you can decide, okay, right now I really need to block. It's a good turn to block. Or this is a turn where I really need to attack because the enemy they're going to cast a spell on me. I can't do anything about that. I'll just attack right now and hold my shields, or hopefully get more shields later, more defense later when the enemy actually attacks me. So I really like that. I like that information about what the enemy is going to do. But I also like this idea of that you're always on the clock. Your health is constantly ticking down. It is important to maintain enough health to get to the end. And I did not in the game through. I didn't realize this until halfway through. And by then, I was a little bit too late. I made it to the final boss, but I died against the final boss because of that. Um, Another thing that really caught me off guard was that you are really only deck building between enemies. So it felt, if you've played Clank, it felt a little bit like Clank, but in that every time you move to a new location, you are fighting a little battle or you're doing something. Sometimes it's a market, sometimes it's a little encounter. Usually you're having a little battle. And that battle involves multiple turns where you are going, you're playing your hand of cards, you're discarding the rest, and then you're doing it again. That's standard deck building thing. But you're not actually, this is the thing that's really cool, you are not, during each deck building encounter, you are not acquiring new cards. You are acquiring new cards after each encounter. So either after you defeat an enemy boss or an enemy, you are presented with 3 random cards and you can pick one of them. And also along the way at different markets, you can pay to cull your deck to remove cards from your deck or to add new cards to your deck. So they've separated the market from what we typically think of as deck building, which is the things that you're doing with your cards in your turn. In most deck building games, you are spending resources on some turns at least to acquire more cards into your hand. In this game, they've separated the card acquisition stage from the normal hand management phase of the game where you're actually using and playing cards. And that really surprised me. I didn't know at all going into this game that was what was going to happen. But I really liked that separation. It felt really, really good. It almost made me want to play a version of Clank where that is a little bit more like this, where you are moving through the dungeon and having these little encounters, and then separately going to the markets as you do in Clank, but not for cards, and acquiring cards for your deck. So I thought that was really, really cool. I wonder if Slay the Spire was inspired by Clank at all. What else? Any other favorite mechanisms? I have a note here saying that there's a set number of resources. I don't know what I meant by that. What did I mean by that? A set number. I had these notes on my screen as I do these videos. I don't know what I meant by a set number of resources. Oh, Nope, I have no idea. I totally forgot. But there are plenty of other things to like about Slay the Spire. I would love to hear your thoughts about your favorite mechanisms in the game, or if any of these remind you of another game, whether it's digital or tabletop. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks.